Ladies and gentlemen, a new era has begun in Miami. The first move of the offseason has been made. We haven't even gotten a week into the offseason. It was a very, very, very quick process to hire the new general manager, and 4 days into the offseason, because it happened yesterday, or 5 days into the offseason, the Miami Dolphins, they got their guy, they got their general manager, John Eric Sullivan, former president of player operations for the Green Bay Packers. I'm sure we're going to learn more about him when he has his press conference, whenever that is. I don't know. But John Eric Sullivan, um, if you want to know a little bit more about him, he's been with the Green Bay Packers for nearly 22 years. That is basically my entire lifetime. He started out with the Packers, and this is all posted from the Miami Dolphins on Twitter. This is where I'm getting it from. Um, he started out with the Packers in 2003 as a scouting intern for training camp. In 2004 and 2007, Sullivan was an NFS scout slash football operations. In 2008, 2011, Sullivan was a college scout. In 2012 to 2015, he continued to be a college scout on Southeast teams. In 2016 and 2017, he got promoted to the director of college scouting. So he really took a look at college players, and like when teams would go to scout games, like if the Green Bay Packers were going to scout Alabama versus Auburn, Sullivan would be representing the Green Bay Packers to go scout that game. In 2018 to 2021, Sullivan was the co-director of player personnel, and then in 2022 to 2025, Sullivan was the president of player personnel. So that is his entire timeline, and it has led him to this point. It has led him to this point in his career that he is now the general manager of the Miami Dolphins. Stephen Ross had a press release yesterday to talk about this. Dolphins chairman and owner Stephen Ross said the following: "I could not be more excited to welcome John Eric Sullivan as our new general manager. John Eric brings a clear vision for how to build and run a football team." So, big bonus right there. This is a football guy. John Sullivan is he sleeps and breathes football. That's a big bonus. Um, where am I? John Eric brings a clear vision for how to build and run a football team, founded upon his own experience at a winning organization. As we went through our search process, it became undeniable the respect John Eric has across the league as a talent evaluator, leader, and man of integrity. We had an extremely talented group of candidates, and John Eric's ability to stand out so clearly speaks to how impressive he is. Apparently, he was really good with these interviews the last two times, because he had a Zoom interview and then an in-person interview. Um, Not only for his experience, but also his depth of knowledge, his detail oriented approach, and his passion. I believe we found the best of the best in John Eric, and I'm looking forward to working with him as he leads us into the new era of Dolphins football. Okay, first and foremost, I'm not calling him John Eric. That's just way too. That just doesn't sound right at all. So, what do I call him? John? Do I call him Eric? Do we call him J.E.? Or what I'm thinking of just calling him is Sully. I think I'm just going to call him Sully. So, we're going into its new era with Sully as our new general manager. This was the press release yesterday from Sully, and he said the following: What an incredible honor it is to serve as general manager of the Miami Dolphins, an organization of history, tradition, and great pride. I want to express my gratitude to Stephen Ross and his family for exceptional opportunity and the belief they've placed me to lead this storied franchise forward. I also want to thank the entire Packers organization, especially, I'm going to butcher this name, Brian Gutenitz and the late Ted Thompson, for their leadership and allowing me to be entrenched in a process that has brought me more than 30 years of sustained success to Green Bay. Now, as we forge ahead, we will build a football team that is resilient, physical, and tough. Let me say that again. Now, as we forge ahead, we will build a football team that is resilient, physical, and tough. That is music to my ears because we have been anything but tough the last 4 years with the old regime, with Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer. We will compete no matter the circumstances with the ultimate goal of competing for division championships and Super Bowls. Our team building process will be intentional, disciplined, and sound, and we will do it together with collaboration and hard work. It has always been and always will be a team sport. I can't wait to get started. As a Dolphins fan, as a diehard Miami Dolphins fan, ladies and gentlemen, I don't even know the guy, but based off that press release, I would run through a wall for him. Just for him saying that we're going to be a tough, resilient, physical football team, and no matter the circumstances, we're going to compete. That is just absolute music. That is music to my ears. So, if you want to learn a little bit more about John Eric Sullivan, this is him talking about his philosophy as an executive. This is when he was a part of the Packers organization.
Yeah, I think, I've always been taught that the draft is your lifeblood, if you will. You build through the draft. It's a young man's game. You want to make sure that you're acquiring young, talented players that fit your culture. I think you supplement through free agency. You look at what Ron did with Reggie White, what Ted did with Charles Woodson. I think those are dangerous waters to tread in all the time because typically teams aren't moving on from good players that are healthy and good in the locker room. They're trying to keep those themselves. But I think you got to build through the draft. I think you supplement free agency. I think you always have to be assessing your quarterback situation, making sure you have a trigger man that you can win with. And I think that you have to identify your core players within your team at all levels, your difference makers, your starters, your role guys, and the guys that are really good within their role and fit your culture. I think you have to do everything in your possibility to retain those players and make sure that you're keeping that together so that you can have sustained success over time.
So there you go. His way of winning is building through the draft and just drafting and drafting and drafting and drafting. And it makes total sense because you look at what the Packers have done over the years, like, look at their offense. Everybody except Josh Jacobs, they've gotten through the draft. They had Aaron Rodgers on the team in 2020, but what did they do? They went out and got Jordan Love in the first round. He sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 2 years, and look where he is now. Jordan Love is one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL, and he is about to play in his 4th ever playoff game tonight against the Chicago Bears. So that was an absolute home run by the Packers organization, and John Eric Sullivan had a huge part to play in that. Their entire offense, you look at their wide receivers, draft. Their offensive line, outside of Aaron Banks, draft. So he said it best, man. It's a young man's game. And the more young players you have on the team, the better. I think the Dolphins are going to go into a youth movement this upcoming offseason and going into 2026. You're going to see a lot of new different faces on this team. You're going to see a lot of young players on this team. Um, and what the Packers have done, in the past, the Packers aren't, um, they don't get greedy in the draft. They'll either trade up a couple spots, like 2 spots, and they get their guy, or they're just going to stay pat exactly where they are, and they're going to draft. And I absolutely love that strategy. And I love that with this guy saying that his philosophy is you got to build through the draft. You got to get younger. Um, the Dolphins have 5 draft picks in the top 100 this upcoming draft. I expect the Dolphins to keep those 5 picks and draft and use all their draft picks. And with this guy saying that you could build through the draft, what does that mean for certain players on the team? Like, I'm very interested to see what he's going to do with Jalen Waddle. I'm very interested to see what he's going to do with Devon Achane. Guys like Aaron Brewer and Jordan Brooks are on there last year, and they're going to want to get paid. So I'm very excited to see what John Eric Sullivan's plan is going into the offseason. Obviously, his first order of business is going to be hiring the head coach and then what to do with the contract of Tua Tagovailoa. But for the people asking, has John Harbaugh's chances gotten slimmer with the hire of John Eric Sullivan? The answer is no. The answer is no, because at the time of I'm recording this came out on Twitter 19 minutes ago that the Miami Dolphins have contacted John Harbaugh's camp to express their interest with John Harbaugh being their head coach. So John Harbaugh has not taken interviews this week. He probably wants to sit down and process what he wants to do, where he could potentially want to go. There was a tweet that came out yesterday about what Harbaugh wanted, and it is a lot to ask. I can't find it anywhere, but apparently he wants like $20 million a year. Shoot, man, I can't find it anywhere. Okay, now I gotta go look this up. John Harbaugh. Shoot, I can't find it. Oh well, but just because they did not get John Harbaugh's guy doesn't mean that that John Harbaugh still doesn't have a chance to be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. They're probably going to bring in John Harbaugh next week. They have an interview lined up with Kevin Stefanski. That is according to Diana Rossini. And they're going to get the ball rolling on this thing. And you can imagine how the interview went with Sullivan, where he was I respectfully, if I'm going to take this job, I would respectfully like to do it the right way and have my own guy, have my own head coach. And I respect that, because we needed to totally move on from Mike McDaniel. I'm so happy that they moved on from Mike. Mike is going to find a job easily. He's already got interviews lined up with the Lions as offensive coordinator, the Cleveland Browns as the head coach, the Tennessee Titans as the head coach. Jesus Christ, what's all that honking going on out there? Oh, man. But it's a new era. I'm excited. Does John Eric Sullivan being the general manager mean that John Harbaugh doesn't have a chance to be the head coach? That couldn't be further from the truth. But I wouldn't be surprised if they take a look at the Packers guys that John Eric Sullivan has connections with. So, Jeff Hafley, if the Packers lose tonight, defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley, he's going to be a candidate. I think Mike McCarthy is going to be a candidate because John Eric Sullivan has a connection with Mike McCarthy from their time together in Green Bay. And then another one I would look out to who wants a new contract going into the offseason is Matt LaFleur. So if the Packers lose tonight and they lose badly, maybe Matt LaFleur becomes an option. And if I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's a young man's league. Just like John Eric Sullivan said, it's a young man's league. If Matt LaFleur becomes available, I would take LaFleur over John Harbaugh as head coach of the Miami Dolphins. So, this is an exciting time. I'm going to admit it right now. This is a very exciting time to be a fan of the Miami Dolphins. We got our general manager, one of the best available, and I'm excited to see where this puppy rolls. But the Dolphins are going to be interviewing head coaches all week. When they're going to hire a head coach, I don't know. But what's also really nice is in situations like this in the past, the Dolphins have been sloppy. You know how they've gotten in trouble with the league for tampering and stuff. They're doing it very, very carefully this offseason because they had to announce the hiring of John Eric Sullivan on Friday, because if they didn't, with the wild card game starting today, they would have had to wait until Tuesday to announce it. But it was very smart that they did it yesterday. And the Dolphins, so far, man, it's a week into the offseason. They've hired already one of the best candidates out there for general manager. John Eric Sullivan, welcome to the 305. Welcome to the Miami Dolphins. Our new general manager, John Eric Sullivan.